Hey guys, this one strategy I'm going to share with you in this video could quite literally double or triple your land business overnight. And that's the strategy of double closes or novations. They're essentially the same thing. And mastering this strategy will allow you to turn dead leads or bad properties into large payday. So let's jump in and take a look.
All right, guys, we're here on my computer. I put together this presentation and we're going to go through novations and or double closes for land investors. Okay. This is a strategy that literally blew up our business. In fact, it's blown up many other Leah members' businesses because it's such a powerful strategy. In fact, there's a gentleman that some of you guys might be familiar with. His name is Femi. Femi was a Leah member. He's actually runs his own coaching program now. And when Femi joined Leah 2+ years ago, he was just doing the cash flip model, right? Buy for 20, sell for 40, put your money in it, or use a joint venture funder. And I'll never forget, we hosted our first meetup in San Diego. Super chill. We had like 8 people there, like really low key. And Femi came, he drove down from LA and he was down there hanging out with us. And he was talking to Michael Bull and some of the other guys. And they were talking about double closing, how we're taking these contracts, not putting any money into them outside of earnest money and going and ripping big profits, right? And how we're turning kind of dead leads or zombie opportunities into HUD statements that we're getting paid out on. And I'll never forget that while Femi was there, he was getting ready to go and travel the world. He was going to like Dubai, Turkey, Italy, Spain, England. He's going all over for an entire quarter. And I remember his like mind was blown. He was like, holy crap, that's crazy. And while he was traveling, he shared this win. He went, traveled, and just started grinding and putting this double close framework to work and put together $600,000+ in his pipeline from this one change, one strategy, like one simple framework changed everything. So I think you guys are going to learn a lot here today. It's easier than most people have made it out to, but there's definitely a lot to be aware of, a lot to be careful of. Okay. But let's talk about when we use this double close strategy. So there's 3 times that we use it. Now, if you only double close, you've got a hammer and everything looks like a nail and you're going to get yourself in trouble. So don't be a dummy. I really think it's stupid to just say, I only double close or I only cash flip. We need to be a 3-dimensional land investor where we can look at opportunities from every angle. And so this is a great strategy, but it definitely has its pros and cons. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So you need kind of a rubric or a compass of like, when should I use this? When should I not use this? Okay. So there's 3 times that we think about using it. 1, if we have a questionable property. Okay. I use this on the deals that we have question marks on, the less than savory perfect properties. If I've got a perfect property, I want to put my name on title and protect my position in it, okay? I don't want to run the risk of losing the deal because there is that risk here, okay? So questionable property. Second thing is questionable market. Imagine you're in a brand new market and there's not a single comp for a 10-mile radius. You might be like, dude, I really don't know what this thing is worth. Property's nice, but I'm a little concerned because there's not a lot of comp data. And in some of those markets, there's not a lot of realtors out there. Like it can just be a very thin market. And so we want to think about protecting our downside, mitigating our risk. And this is one of the ways that we think about it, both as it relates to the property and the market. And the third thing is compressed margins, right? How many sellers do we talk to where we need to buy it at 30 and they're only willing to take 50? Is there a way that we could still solve their problems and turn it into a profitable deal? Yeah, there certainly is, right? And sometimes you just can't negotiate your way down to a price that makes sense for you. And so those are kind of like the 3 guiding light rules that I use of thinking about when should I be suggesting a double close or pushing a double close. Now, in full candor, we do provide a range offer to all of our sellers and we will have a double close offer in that range. We also do put the ball in the seller's court and kind of let them decide, but we'll position that double close offer to be very favorable and kind of be like the only obvious one to take if, we really don't want to cash close the property, right? So our cash close might be really discounted where we might be kind of framed that double close is the option to go with. Okay. So what is double closing? Well, it's very different than assigning properties. A lot of people think that double closes are wholesaling. That is not the case. Okay. Wholesaling is really the way I think about it. Wholesaling is like a B2B transaction, right? You rarely are ever going to assign a contract to a retail end buyer. It just doesn't really happen. And that's part of the reason that wholesaling or assigning doesn't really work that well for our business model because most of who we work with are simple end buyers. They're just retail folks that want to own land. And so with a wholesale or assignment deal, you're just assigning your interest to that contract or interest in the property, assigning that contract to someone else. And they're essentially just paying you a fee for you to assign it. Okay. Got the deal locked up at 100. You pay me 20 grand as an assignment fee. I give you this contract. You go and take it over. That's what wholesaling is. But novations or double closes is an A, B, and C transaction. It's typically a B to C transaction because we're going to a retail market and we're saying, this is the seller here, okay? They're party A. We come in as party B. We create an agreement with them. Let's say we lock this deal up for $30,000. So that's our agreement with the seller. Now, in the contract, which I'll show you guys an example of a contract here, in that contract, we have the ability to market the property, right? So we can bring it to the MLS or Facebook or land.com or wherever we want. And let's say we go and list this thing on the open market for $40,000 and then we close, we capture the spread in between, okay? So you're typically doing like a true simultaneous closing where we're first closing with the A party. So we're closing our side. And then at the same time, we're then closing to the C party. Now, it's not quite that simple, of course. There are many variables there. This is very much a who, not how strategy, okay? You need the right contacts to get the right terms because there are many markets that say, no, look at the realtor or the title company, we won't do a simultaneous closing. You've got to wait 7 days in between. So now you got to use money to close on it, or you have to show the C party what you're buying it for. You have to get crazy signatures from the seller to list the deal. A lot of people say, oh, well, that is just a bad state to double close in. And we'll talk about what's a good state versus a bad state. But really, the good state, bad state argument, I don't buy into it that much because it's really just about who. You need the right realtor and you need the right closing attorney or title company. And the situation could look radically different based on who you select there. Now, as a general rule of thumb, I would say that red states predominantly have better terms for double closing. So if you just look at a political map of the US, usually red states are more favorable for double closing, but there are exceptions to the rule. For example, California is notoriously a hard state to double close in. One of our coaches, Michael Bull, does a good amount of business in California, at least he did last time I checked. And, when I had tried to double close in California, all sorts of rules. You had to wait 7 days in between the transaction. And in some cases, they wanted you to disclose the price that you were buying it at. Like they just kind of killed the deal. Michael Bull did a lot of calling, a lot of searching, and found a title company that was totally down. Like, no, we'll close same day, no problems. You don't need to disclose the price. And so just the right selection of people. Same thing with realtors. There's a lot of realtors who say, oh, no, double closing is not legal. Won't do it. You call another realtor like, yeah, no problem. I did one last week. Totally cool with it. So it's really about the selection. So you really want to spend a lot of time working to select the right realtors and title companies. And in fact, that's exactly why we built out our double close realtor database inside of Land Insights, which is free for our users, because it is such a value add to have a Rolodex of these double close agents that you can go and work with. It's really the make or break for being successful with this strategy. Okay, so back to here. Now you guys will hear me talking about realtors, right? And what if you said, Sumner, I don't want to use a realtor. Let's talk about the pros and cons of not using a realtor. Can you double close without a realtor? Heck yeah, you certainly can. You could use a flat fee MLS. You could go on Facebook. You could go on land.com. You can definitely do it without a realtor. The problem is when you don't have a realtor in the transaction, you definitely are kind of the bad guy. Like you're just like this rogue agent, and like the title company's like, who is this person? And a lot of times the buyer's agents are like, what the heck is going on here? Like everyone's kind of confused and looking at you in a weird way. Where if you have a realtor with you, that's your listing agent, there's kind of a halo effect that gets created. There's a trust and legitimacy that they carry that you kind of attach your band, like you hitch your wagon to. And so I find that when we go to the closing attorney, like it's much smoother when they have the rapport of the agent, right? Same thing with the buyer's agent. When we have an agent involved, everyone kind of sleeps easy. It's like, no, it's all good. Without that, you definitely can run into a lot more kind of managing of expectations and explaining. And I just find it creates a lot of work that I would simply like to avoid. So we spend a lot of time to find good agents. And I think that's the make or break for the strategy, but we've done it without agents. And we've done it on the flat fee MLS and really everywhere else in between. And it certainly does work, but I find that the work is not really worth it. Now, there are situations though, where that's your only option. You can't find a good agent to double close. That's a good contingency plan to use those other platforms as a backup. But as much as possible, I would try to go and find a great agent that you can work with. And typically a great agent that works with investors, which is really what we're looking for. Usually they know great title companies that also work with investors. And so that can solve a lot of the work for you by using their contacts. And then again, they'll give you a warm introduction and everything runs so much smoother for this process. So I really want you to be thinking who, not how for this. It's who, not how, pretty much all day long. Now, if you don't have the contact of an agent and you're trying to find title companies, my recommendation for you is try to find the small, regional, non-franchise title companies, okay? So like the small, like mom and pop, more investor-friendly title companies are gonna play out a lot better than the big dogs, the First Americans and stuff like that. You can still double close with them, but it's like, how much additional pain do you have to go through? So in the best case scenario, what happens here is you have what's called pass-through funding, okay? And so the best case scenario is that the C party goes and pays off the A party, okay? And then we capture the remaining difference. That's the best case scenario, because in that situation, we didn't have to come out of pocket for anything. And the deal closes same day. It's back to back. It's within minutes. That's the best case scenario. That's called pass-through funding. But to get that is not always easy. So what might be more typical, if you find like a good, not great closing company, is that our money has to go pay the A party, but then same day, the C party will close with us and then they'll release the funds. So it's like, it's essentially back to back. Yeah, our cash had to leave the bank account for a day, whatever. And so like, that's like a good situation. It's not great, but it's good. And then your worst case scenario is the same example here, but you have a cool off period, okay? So they might say, yeah, look, you're going to close the A party, but we have to cool off for 7 days before the C party closes. You know, we'll still do it. This happens to us like every month, but it's not ideal. Now, I guess the worst case scenario is that the title company says, no, look, you have to disclose your purchase price to the new party and you have to disclose to the seller what you're selling it. And like at that point, just find a new title company, because there's definitely someone out there that's willing to not make you go through that. And that can certainly, if not kill the deal, just make the deal so much harder to work through. We'll talk about how we negotiate and structure these things with sellers, so you feel like you're all on the up and up. And that's an important point to make. You got to be on the up and up, okay? You are operating in a totally different world. It's unfamiliar to a lot of sellers, unfamiliar to buyers, unfamiliar to agents, unfamiliar to title companies in a lot of cases. So you've got to be the beacon of integrity, okay? You've got to be on the up and up with how you use this. There are unfortunately people out there that have used this for bad, and that's why states like South Carolina have literally banned it, right? Now, there's still even workarounds there, as crazy as that is, but some states have cracked down on it because there are bad actors out there that have taken advantage of people. So we'll talk about how you can operate with the highest integrity when using the strategy. Now, here's a recent deal. It's kind of an example for you guys to look at. Cool property, great listing. You guys can see we don't mess around with our listings. To me, this is like a perfect listing. I think it's beautiful. So here's the deal. Acquisition price, 33 grand, 33.2. And then we got an offer at 50K, no contingencies. So technically like 18K spread. At the end of the day, we'll probably make 12 grand on this, something like that. So not a slam dunk deal, but again, this was an opportunity that was unconvertible for us. Like we couldn't get it down to that, $28,000 to $25,000 price we needed to be as hard as we tried. And so yeah, 12 grand is nothing to sneeze at. It's not a ton of money in this business at the same time. But when you think about converting a dead lead, it's like, I'm okay with that. Now you guys will see $500 earnest money. This is an important point. So on all of these deals, we are always putting down earnest money. The reason that we do that is if money doesn't trade hands with a contract, it's not really an enforceable contract. Like in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of a court, something's got to trade hands of value. Okay. If it hasn't, it's really hard to have a strong position. This is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I could be totally wrong here. That's my little ignorant understanding though. And so I honestly recommend that you put earnest money down on pretty much every contract, but especially your double closes to protect your position. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, you can file what's called an MOI, a memorandum of interest, or some people might call it an MOC, which would be a memorandum of contract. Essentially, you're recording your purchase agreement and alerting the county, and that will put a lien against the property if they try to sell it, or it'll cloud the title rather, right? So if they try to go and sell it and they use a title company, it's going to show up in the due diligence. Wait, you guys already have a contract in place with Joe Schmo. you got to get that cleared up. So either they end up selling to you, or they clear that cloud and they pay you off. Now, we certainly don't do that for every deal, but it may make sense in some cases. But we do put earnest money down on every deal. Now, that's also a big part of our pitch, right? What we're telling the seller is, look, we're giving you something, because there is a chance that the property really was so bad, or the market was so bad, that the deal doesn't sell. And so I think what's fair is that the seller gets paid for that time. And so we make our earnest money 9 times out of 10 non-refundable, which means they keep that cash. And so when they sign, that money's either going directly to them or it's going into escrow, and they're keeping that money no matter what happens here. And my whole pitch is, has anyone ever paid you to own the property? They're always like, no one's ever paid me to own the property. Well, cool. Today's your lucky day, because no matter what happens here, you keep the coin. I think it's also just kind of a sign of good faith. That's like, look, we're putting skin in this game here. And of course, we have additional skin in the game. Like, think about the cost to get these photos. We are investing into the deal outside of it, but I want the seller to feel that immediately. In some cases, we'll just sell it to them or wire it to them so they can get the cash immediately. Now, in a lot of cases, we're typically doing like $500 to $1,000. Obviously, it depends on the property. You can control huge properties with not a lot of money in terms of earnest money. Now, in some cases, you do have to put more money down, and we might structure the terms a little bit different. Maybe it's partially non-refundable and partially refundable. It is up to negotiation for sure. So read the room. You're not a robot, but understand that no matter what, you should be putting earnest money down. Now, here's an example of a contract. There's so many ways to contract this stuff. I am not an attorney. Please let me state that for the record. This is just an example of one of the contracts that we have used. We've got many different variations. In fact, there's 2 templates that we provide LEA members. So there's many ways to put this together. In some cases, you're going to have a power of attorney, or really depends on what's required in the state, and depends on what your title company and realtor is requesting, and depends on what you want to use. But typically something like this, where it's giving you the ability to market the property, it's what's going to be most common in these situations. Okay. Work with a lawyer. You can go inside of our Discord and find our lawyer there. His name is Seb. He's an amazing guy to work with. You can work with someone like that, or find an attorney to create a contract and review the contract with you. You can't mess around with this stuff, okay? It's very important this stuff is contracted correctly, that you are following the law to the letter and doing everything on the up and up. So speaking of that, let's talk about being on the up and up. How do we operate here with the highest level of integrity with sellers? Well, we don't beat around the bush. That's the first thing. Your word is your bond. Be real with what you say. Like, don't tell them things that aren't true. It's so obvious, yet people don't do that. And so I don't want to do business with someone where this strategy doesn't serve them. There are so many sellers where we do double closes with them, where they literally come back to us and say, thank you guys. Like, literally, you guys saved the day. You got me more than what I was offered elsewhere. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now you might be saying, well, why doesn't the seller just go list it themselves? Because a bird in the hand is worth more than 2 in the bush, right? For them to have a contract, to have earnest money, to know what they're going to get, to know when it should sell, is more valuable to them than putting it on market and sitting there. Like, for a lot of times, they want to still hit the easy button, but they want to get more for the property. And that's where double closing comes into play. So when you have a seller that doesn't have super urgent timelines and is looking to get the most they can without bringing it to the open market, you've got a great fit. But we're very, very clear with them. So when we talk about this offer, we talk about, hey, we are going to shop this deal around. We're going to show this deal. We're going to have boots on the ground of the property. In fact, we'll probably have people walk the property. Part of our process to get the most amount of money for you is that we are going to work the snot out of this and use our list of buyers to try to find people that are going to be a good fit for this property. And in a lot of cases, that means bringing it to the open market and working with our realtor. If we sell this property and make in excess of what we have on the contract, are you going to be mad about that? It's like full candor. And the crazy thing is, most sellers don't care. Like, they're like, no, totally cool. Now, of course, there are some that are like, no, I don't want you doing that. And that's your cue that this is not the right fit, and do not press the matter, okay? We need to be working with people where we're partners, like where we are going to be working together for the next however many months. What's typical here is 90 to 120 days. We've gone as far as 1 year on a contract. So it really does depend, but it's very important that you're selecting the right sellers. Again, who, not how. Like the who also relates to selecting the right sellers to where this is going to solve their problems. So when you give that range offer, they're going to say, well, why is there a range? And we're going to say, well, here's why, blah, 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 and go through the things that I mentioned there. Now, the next thing with operating with integrity is communicating with the seller while you're under contract. Don't go rogue on them and leave them hanging. It's your job to look at this as a partnership, and you're going to communicate every step of the way and say, this is what we're doing, this is where we're at. Hey, there's no update, but I just wanted to check in. Keep them in the loop, okay? Because the biggest risk here with double closing is really one thing. Now, of course, you could piss off the wrong person, and you could have been disingenuous with your language and get yourself in a pickle. But really, that's never happened to us. I'm sure it could happen. The thing that has happened to us, what I'm trying to say, and this is very, very painful, is that you go and find the C party here, you're ready to rock and roll, and then the A party dips out. That's your biggest liability. This is not legal advice, but in my opinion, that's the biggest risk with this. Because what if the C party has invested money in their due diligence, they did a perk test, they did all this work, just to have the A party back out, and now you can't actually follow through on selling to the C party? That's a big problem, right? So partially, again, selecting the right seller. It's also nurturing the seller throughout the process and understanding that once the contract's signed, your work is not done. You need to let them know what's going on. And if they know, and they know you're working hard, most people are of integrity. They're not going to snake the deal from you and sell it to someone else. Now, there are crazy people out there, and that's why having earnest money, and that's why having potentially a memorandum of interest is important, because that will protect your position in the case that you had to force a sale. And that's where having good legal support is important as well. Again, I can't recommend Seb enough. If you guys go inside of our Discord, you can make a shout out in there, or just type in Seb and you'll find his information. Having a good lawyer goes a very, very long way. That's the strategy, guys. That's it in a nutshell. It's pretty darn simple. Honestly, this could change your entire business if you get your hands around this. We talk a lot about this inside of Leah. I would say 90+% of our members have this as a strategy that they're using week in and week out within their business. I've found historically that people that just try to do this either leave a lot of money on the table, or they get themselves into hard situations, because you do not want to force the matter, okay? You don't want to put this on someone because it's your only option and have it blow up in your face. You also don't want to lose valuable deals because you were only looking at it from one dimension. So think about this as a tool in your tool belt, not your only tool. And by the way, guys, we just released our free Facebook group. It's the Land Investing Accelerated group. It's free to join. We literally just launched it this week. I would love to see you in there. We're trying to grow this thing to thousands of members. We're sharing exclusive content in there, exclusive training. People are sharing deals for funding, for partnership. It's just a great community to be in. The entire Leah and Land Insights team is in there every single day. Now, this is not competing with our Discord. We have our community that's not going anywhere. But what I found is there's so many people that don't want to join Discord that are Facebook junkies. And so we've done this for you guys. If you're a Facebook power user and you want to be a part of the Leah community, no longer do you just have to use Discord. You certainly still can, but you can mosey on over to our Facebook group here. I'll put the link down below for y'all. Hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up. Cheers.